Welcome back to another episode of the Pathways to Prevention podcast, where we shine a light on the people, stories, and strategies making a difference in the field of prevention. I'm your host, Dave Clausen, and today I am excited to bring you two insightful conversations recorded live from the National Prevention Network Conference, where the theme was Shining a Light on Prevention. In this episode, you'll hear from two exceptional leaders who are driving impactful change in their communities and beyond. First, we have Ben Stevenson from Maryland, who oversees prevention and harm reduction services in Montgomery County, while also running his own consulting firm. Ben shares his experiences, challenges, and successes in empowering youth and integrating prevention with harm reduction in innovative ways. Then, I had the opportunity to sit down with Steve Miller, a true prevention champion, long-term recovery advocate, and fellow podcaster. Steve takes us on a journey through his work in prevention, the powerful role that music has played in his life and in his recovery, and how it continues to inspire his mission to help others. These conversations are full of wisdom, practical insights, and inspiration for anyone involved in prevention work. So let's dive in and hear from these incredible prevention leaders. The vision: a world where all people live free of the burden of drug abuse. This is the Drug Free America Foundation's Pathway to Prevention podcast, where we are committed to developing strategies that prevent drug use and promote sustained recovery. Thank you for not only tuning in, but your continued support and efforts to help make this world a better place. We hope you enjoy this episode.
All right. So first off, coming to folks here from the National Prevention Network Conference, would love for you to just introduce yourself.
Okay. All right. So I'm Ben Stevenson from Maryland. So I work in, oversee prevention and harm reduction services for Montgomery County, Maryland. And then I also own Bess Consulting LLC.
All right, rockin'. So tell me a little bit about the work that you do, whether it be through your consulting company or the harm reduction work. What do you do?
Sure. So on the prevention side, I oversee all of our prevention education and awareness efforts. So that includes community awareness campaigns, efforts around drug take back. Also oversee a youth ambassador program. So we have youth, we pretty much empower young people to use their voice to educate about the dangers of substances, mental health, wellness, and then advocacy. We train them in advocacy. And then on the harm reduction side, I oversee our Narcan training and distribution efforts, a syringe services program, as well as our efforts to distribute fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips. Currently working on expanding harm reduction services into vending machines, and other avenues to try to, meet people where they are and support people until they're ready to pursue their treatment and recovery. And then on the consulting side, I'm a SAPS trainer. So, so I was part of the consultants that did the update of the SAPS curriculum. So now it's the SPIF application for prevention success training versus the substance abuse prevention skills training. And also an ethics trainer. And then I also do, conference presentations. But this week, I decided I just want to be a participant. So I'm, participating in the NPN.
Taking it all in. All right. Well, you got a lot of work you're doing.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that through doing that work, getting it started, maintaining, sustaining, growing that work, you've encountered some challenges or barriers. What are a couple that come to mind?
Yeah, I think that the main challenges you can think of are related to maybe stigma. Still stigma around substance use. So people not necessarily understanding how prevention or how harm reduction works, how they can be married together in a sense to build a stronger system. I think there's been a lot of education on my end and my team's end to try to educate people on how it could look, how it could work together versus, hey, you have this funding, they have that funding, and then you don't really, communicate. And then of course, me working in county government, sometimes you have some extra hoops and hurdles to work to overcome, which is of course, a challenge within itself, but you just still, you get up every day, you fight the good fight. And the joy of prevention is that It's always changing. It's never the same. So you just adapt to the times and figure out how you can be innovative and help your community.
What are some of those successes that you've seen?
Yeah. So I think for me as of late, so we're moving into our 4th year of having a youth ambassador program. In totality, I've been with the county for 10 years. It's something I'd always wanted to do because I knew the power of the youth voice. And so giving them that space, I think, has been very rewarding for me. Working with adults, you can kind of burn yourself out, but working with kids, they energize you, right? So I think this past couple of years, the youth really were in tune with, what we've been experiencing as a country around opioids and overdose deaths and wanted to do something. So, I worked with a group of young people who wanted to change policy within the school system so that youth could carry Narcan within schools. So youth can carry Narcan in our school system without feeling as if they're going to get punished, right? Then also all of the schools are equipped with Narcan all the way down to the elementary schools. And then this past year, youth wanted to actually train their peers on identifying the signs and symptoms of an overdose, how to respond, and how to administer Narcan. So we trained 11 of our youth ambassadors to train other of their peers, and they trained about 300 youth last year and adults. So I think, that has been a major success because now the school system has seen it and they like, hey, we want to make sure that you have youth ambassadors from every high school in the county, where there's 26 high schools, and I've had representatives from maybe 11 of them. So trying to get across the entire county and then build up the infrastructure to where you build a pipeline of those youth having that same message from the middle school level all the way to the high school. So once the high school, situation gets, solidified, we can, filter it down to the middle school level.
I'll call it a 10-year journey that you've been on and still are on to get the youth ambassador program to where it is today. What might be some tips or some things you've learned that you could share with our listeners?
I think one challenge that I ran into initially was trying to establish smaller youth ambassador chapters at each school, which of course in those situations, me being in such a large jurisdiction, those situations is hard because you got to have a sponsor at the school to oversee that. So that was a challenge within itself. So I realized, okay, maybe I need to just pull it back and just do something countywide, knowing that, okay, you got youth from all over the county. How do you want to make sure they have the ability to meet without having to drive somewhere? So luckily Zoom has been, I think Google Meets, all kinds of platforms we used initially have been phenomenal because it helps to keep youth engaged. But then also giving them the power to control it, and not just having the voice, but it's their baby, and letting them know that, hey, we're only going to be successful based off of youth. I'm just here to support you and to put some fiscal, money or put something behind you to support the strategies and initiatives you want to do. So I think having that youth co-chair model, having youth officers, them leading the meetings, them pretty much recruiting, doing all those different things has been, phenomenal. I just sitting back and just kind of watching it manifest,
Yeah. Well, I heard what sounded like a pretty good piece of wisdom, but you kind of just rolled right off your tongue. You had a vision, the local chapter's vision, but then you realized that wasn't the right path forward, and you adjusted course, all still within that grander big picture vision of the youth advisory, that not afraid to pivot.
Right, of course. And I think I learned that from, experiences with like larger organizations like CADCA, and then seeing other organizations within my state that were doing youth initiatives that were, maybe that jurisdiction wasn't at the size of mine, but saying, hey, they can do it, we can do it too. And then just getting, upper leadership to believe that it could be done. And now that they're seeing it, they're like, wow, how can we be a part? What can we do to support? Like, what do you need? And things like that. And so I think that has, being able to put prevention in a place of prominence is important because, we have the Institute of Medicine's continuum of care, but sometimes people still don't understand prevention because it's not providing those immediate results, right? And so if you can show some of those mild substance moments from, kids sharing their experiences in the program, from them sharing what they learned to, county leadership, seeing them present and articulate themselves in a way that they are just like, wow, these are some, and even trying to get, to the kids who might be on the fence of if I want to use or not. Hey, this seems pretty cool. And I can get community service hours and, writing recommendation letters for college. And we've gotten to a place of giving honor cords for graduating seniors so that they can wear a graduation. So when other kids are seeing that, they're like, hey, I want to be a part of that. I think that kind of speaks to the importance of like not only addressing risk factors in our community, but also addressing those protective factors. So that positive opportunity to belong is important because I can see it, I can see the importance of it, right?
Yes. So I'll say I've got 4 questions left.
Okay.
You touched on 2 things that I hear from folks in the prevention field all the time as far as barriers, challenges, or how the heck are we supposed to do that? One, getting upper leadership on board, but then also the buy-in and the youth taking ownership.
Yeah.
What kind of insights or experience could you share there for our listeners?
Yeah. So, I learned a lot from, just some time working with CADCA, and a really good friend of mine oversaw like the youth leadership initiative and that mantra of youth led, but adult guided. And I really believed in that because I could see how like the youth that were working with CADCA in those spaces, they were very bright, phenomenal, and they were leading educational sessions and things like that. And I was like, I know I have kids in our youth in my county that can do that same thing. I just have to find them. It's initially it kind of happened organically, but then, youth started reaching out, hey, I'm doing this project on such and such, and it's related to fentanyl or whatever. And I'm like, well, why are you not in my program? Like, what have you been doing? And then they'll sign on and they're like, hey, I don't know why I haven't been here, but I'm happy to be here now. Right.
Yeah.
So I think really just understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. You got to just continue to just keep fighting the good fight. And eventually those things that you want to change and manifest in your community will happen.
Like Rich Lucy from DEA says, prevention is about the long game.
Yes. Yeah.
10 years running.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious if you have a good story that really shows the impact of your work.
Okay.
With the youth, and stigma, whatever it may be, just a story that talks about the impact.
Yeah. So, I used to get requests to, do presentations at high schools, right? And you never really know the impact of those presentations because you might be presenting to like a parent group or something like that, right? And so we eventually got to a place of wanting to train all of our bus operators in naloxone administration so that they can have Narcan on the bus and things like that, just in case an overdose happens on the bus. Well, not knowing that one of the administrators or one of the managers or supervisors over the transit system was in one of my presentations at the high school because their daughter was a student at the high school. It was a full circle moment because he basically said to me, he was like, a lot of the things you shared that night helped me and my wife because our daughter eventually dealt with substance use disorder, but we knew what to do to help support her and navigate her through that space. So that really it was a real aha moment to me that, what we're doing is working. And yes, if someone does go down that path, you still want to make sure you give them those tools and maybe you can help bring them back and keep them safe and keep them alive. Right. So I think that was just, there's been a lot of moments.
Literally, you thought it gave me goosebumps. That's real. I can feel that. One last question. I promise. I promise. You mentioned earlier, you said it so eloquently about putting prevention in a prominent place. The theme of this conference is shining a light on prevention. So can you give us a description? What does that mean to you?
I really feel like there's a lot of opportunities for prevention out here, whether it's through not only, pursuit of grant fundings, but I think us mobilizing to say, hey, block grant funds haven't changed in the past 20 years. Maybe we need to advocate, to get that shift. But I think making sure that we're at the tables of those who are in control of funding, right? And so I think for me, I've been fortunate enough to be at some of those tables where, we are gaining access to some of the opioid abatement funds to build up the infrastructure of prevention in the county and to build up harm reduction in the county and things like that, which, treatment services and crisis services and other service areas, they've always had money to do the things that they needed to do. But prevention never really had that. And so I think, continuing to, do the work, advocate, show, positive results and get to those tables is important to help us get to that prominent level that, hey, we're a part of the continuum or the spectrum of services as well. We need to be funded in a way so that we can prevent all those people from having to go to treatment and experience recovery, right? So I think not only, advocating for ourselves, but also building up those allies to help us advocate to show the power of prevention, because it's definitely a place for us. And, we're all in the same business of trying to, promote optimal well-being in our communities.
Yep. The themes that I heard were persistence, perseverance, together, and I would say a twofold: listening and learning.
Yes, of course, because we might be the experts on the process. Of course, we got to connect with those and collaborate with those people in the community, because they're the experts on the story of that community. And we can't really, talking to a lot of my colleagues, we talk about shifting from being, implementers to coaches or mentors, so that, you can sustain some of the efforts and outcomes that are in the communities, so that's the hope and goal, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, what would be one final takeaway, call to action to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. I would just say that, my experience in this field is that it's important to network, because you can always learn from somebody else, something innovative, something creative that somebody else has done in another part of the country that you can maybe implement in your area. And then always just making sure you stay abreast and up on top of, language and evidence-based practices and all those different things, because I've only been in the field for 18 years and it's changed exponentially over the course of that time. So, just staying abreast of that and staying engaged, mentors, having a mentor. I have multiple. And, if you feel burnt out, you gotta make sure you take care of yourself. Mom's always said, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of somebody else. So.
All right, folks, that was an enlightening conversation with Ben, who's truly leading the way in integrating prevention and harm reduction in his community. And I just loved hearing about his work with youth, and his commitment to breaking down barriers is inspiring and really does offer us some valuable lessons for everyone in the prevention field. Now we're shifting gears to another powerful voice in prevention. Steve Miller is not only a long-term recovery advocate, but also someone who's found a unique way to incorporate his passion for music into his prevention work. Steve's insights on the role of music in shaping behavior and his own journey through recovery are both thought-provoking and motivating. So let's dive into my conversation with Steve Miller. All right, folks, bringing you another conversation from the NPN conference, where the theme is shining a light on prevention. And I'm honored to be hanging out here with the one and only Steve Miller, who is a prevention champion, prevention podcaster, man in long-term recovery, and is sharing his voice, his story, his wisdom to help make positive change in this world. So without further ado, Steve, great to be talking to you again.
Hey, thanks, Dave. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So we're jumping right in. I don't want to really tell your background and why you work in prevention now, but I'm hoping you might be able to give us, we'll say a Cliff Notes version, a highlights reel of what led you to working in prevention.
Well, that's always an interesting question, Dave. And one of the things that I've realized, and this has been in the last couple of years, that I would have said, oh, there's just been so many random things that have happened in my life. And then when I sat down and kind of looked at them on a timeline, I realized it was actually a straight line. And it wasn't something that was so haphazard. It was actually what was intended all along for me to be doing. And part of that is the natural evolution. As you said, I'm a person in long-term recovery. And so I've been working in either the treatment field or some variation of prevention for 3 decades now. And so that's really been my life's focus, is my own recovery. And then what I've learned in that journey is, how do I kind of find my work through who I really am? And one of the common denominators through all of this, before I was in recovery, since I've been in recovery, and now in the prevention field, has been this, I call it the muse, leading me through song, if you will. And I had to learn the prevention field. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know there was a science. I just kind of fit the description of what they were looking for as a new staff member. And I thought, I could do that. And it didn't take me long to figure out that my guiding force through prevention is believing that we find our work through ourselves. And when we do that, kind of strengthens our commitment to do this kind of work. But it also strengthens the workforce, because just like you've kind of found a path that leads you in the work that you're doing, but you started in prevention. And I found a path by starting in prevention, learning the science, learning how the strategic prevention framework operates, all that kind of stuff. Then I stood back and I thought, does music belong in me? And lo and behold, that's kind of the answer has been, oh yeah, it does. Because it's been such a powerful force in my life, I thought it's got to be added into what I'm doing in prevention.
Added into your story, because like you said, it's been a muse behind that straight line to prevention. So let's just talk about that. Let's go right there and talk about music. You say it's been your muse. What do you mean by that? How has it been your muse?
People ask me when I talk about it, they go, so what instrument do you play? And I'm like, I play the radio really well. And if I want to, I can put a record on the turntable, but I am not a musician. I have been someone who has been an avid consumer of music, like a lot of people, since I was an adolescent. And I tell a whole story through a training that I do about how music shaped my life, but how it shapes our lives. And then I just overlay that into the prevention field, because there's a lot of research that shows how music influences our choices. And when we're adolescents and we're trying to figure out who we are and what we want out of life and where we're going to go, we're very susceptible to outside stimulus. And peer pressure is really what that comes down to. And music can be a part of that. Music plays a part in helping us form our identity, because we have such this creative bond with music. Everybody can think for themselves. What was that song that was the soundtrack to your life as an adolescent? What did you dance to? Who'd you fall in love to? Who'd you hang out with your buddies? You know, what was playing in the background? And we all kind of have that somewhere inside of us. My choices happened to be very detrimental, and that was a part of my addiction. And then when I found myself in a recovery process, it was music again that kind of just woke me up and made me realize there are messages in all of these songs that are beneficial to who I am at this particular point in my life. So they were kind of a meditative process. But then when I got into prevention, I started thinking, how could my experience and how could the research that supports my experience be beneficial to a message that would target an audience that's either adolescents, or I talk about how music is a part of the workforce development in my life. Music really, I start my day with it and I probably end with it, but I start most days with a song. And I mean, to prove that to you, this morning, I woke up with a song in my head and I sat down, and before I even really get out of bed, I write kind of a journal entry about that song and what it means to me and how it kind of feels like it's guiding me for the day, what that intention would happen to be. And I've just followed it because it's fun. I feel like I'm kind of the only one that does it. I've shared these ideas with other people, but it's been very insightful for me. And I still provide training and technical assistance through prevention to lots of audiences, but there's this little niche that I talk about where the music kind of fits right in there.
I'd like to zoom in and want to really invite you to share a great example of how music played a part in your addiction. You said it kind of kicked you off and had a prominent role there. Can you give us that clear example? Like what happened?
Well, I mean, think, and I was trying to get, as we're talking about this for the audience to kind of get this in their mindset as well. If you think about a song that you hear, and when you hear it, you're kind of transported to a time and place in your life. Now, I have a song that always takes me to exactly the same memory. And it's uncanny that it's a song by AC/DC, and it takes me to the lake outside of the town I grew up in. And it's not just the song and the association of that time in my life. I'm telling you right now, it's almost like I can feel the air around the lake on my skin. It's like being transported to that memory and reliving it again. And that's how powerful music is. So I ask people all the time, what is that song for you? And why do you have such a strong association with it? Maybe it's because you fell in love, that kind of thing. Maybe it's the first dance you ever had, because I have that story as well. But there was a time in my life when if you'd have said, oh, Steve, you'll smoke cigarettes or you'll drink alcohol or you'll use some kind of substance, I would have thought you're crazy, because I was like any other kid that I grew up with. I played sports, hung out with my friends. We rode our bikes everywhere. I grew up in the 1970s. Anybody that's listening probably knows what that was like. And one day, I know that it was a Saturday. I know that it was 8 minutes after 9 o'clock in the morning, and an older brother to one of my friends came into the room and put on a song. And in that moment, everything about what I thought life was changed. And the song to me was rock and roll. And I thought it was about something that I wanted to pursue. And it was really about, in that moment, to me, it was about using drugs and alcohol. Now, I had some experience with it before then, but after that moment, everything changed. It was like a slipper slide. It went downhill quick. And then years later, when I got curious about this topic we're talking about, I got to looking at that specific song, and I realized that song is not a pro-drug use anthem that I thought it was. It's actually a very thought-provoking message to one of the singer's bandmates, because he was concerned about his own health in his own life because of his substance use. And so I point out to the audience that as adolescents, we kind of make a lot of things up based upon what we want to hear, because we're looking for that path, that identity. Who are we? Where are we going? How do I feel? Those kinds of things. And a song can slip right in there. And I'm not unique in that fashion. I have talked to several people in the last 10 plus years that have told me stories about how they heard a song and made a decision in the moment. And sometimes I've stood back and said, you did what? And then they explain it to me, and it makes perfect sense because of the time of their life, what they were experiencing, those kinds of things. And so that song really impacted my life in a very detrimental way. Some people, it impacts their lives in a very positive, and I've talked to some that a song shaped their life in a way that was very financially rewarding. So I think it's across the board. The question is do we ever really listen to what that song is actually saying to us, or how we feel about it, or what it means to us? And I think that's the key, is really being in the moment and aware enough to know that this song may say one thing, but I may take it another way. And then when we're adolescents, it might behoove us to ask someone, an adult or someone we trust, this is what I hear this song saying, as opposed to, this is what I think this song is saying. So getting some of that feedback and checking that out before I make some sort of a critical life decision. And that's basically, we talk in prevention about media literacy. So that could be printed or television ads or radio or social media, whatever that looks like. I just put it under the heading of, it's really about music literacy and understanding the impact that it has in our lives.
You just made me kind of understand about myself. There's a lot of songs that I love and they make me feel a way when I hear them, and they take me back to those moments like you talked about. But I can't say I know all the lyrics. I may only know just the chorus or one line.
Right.
But I love these songs because of the memories I have, the feelings I have associated to them. Like for my wedding, I asked for I call it a secret first dance. I wanted to dance to a specific song before we went into the actual like dinner afterwards. And so it was just my wife and I and the photographer, and that's it. And I don't know the lyrics to that song. I know the title of it and the artist, but that's it. But I love it. Whenever I hear it come on, it takes me right back to that moment. We're having
right in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's powerful.
I don't know the lyrics.
And what's interesting is it was a reel on one of the social media channels just in the last couple of days. And it was something that said, as a Gen Xer actually listens to the song, and you can see him kind of keying into what the message is and being like, oh, I didn't realize that's what that song was saying. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that fits the bill. Some of us know that hook, and some of us know just the feeling that we get that's associated with the song. But there's a lot of research out there that says, even if we're not consciously aware of the lyrics, some part of our brain is picking up on the messaging of that. Now, whether that's detrimental or whether that's inspiring or whatever that looks like is different for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
No two songs are the same. But like I said, I hear a song, and the song I heard this morning is one that I really only know the hook to. Like you just said, so I Googled the whole lyrics, and then I sat down and wrote a little passage about it. But I have had experiences where I woke up and I had that same thought, some statements going through my head. And I'm like, I don't even know if that's a song.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll Google lyric and then whatever it is I'm thinking. And if it comes up as a song, and I'm amazed. There's been times when I've done that, and I swear to you, I have no recollection of ever hearing that song in my life. Now, where did I pick it up? Why did it come to me in my sleep? I don't know. But I am fascinated by the fact that when I've been led to understanding that there's something stuck in my subconscious, if you will,
mm-hmm.
and it ekes out when I wake up in the morning, and it's a song that I picked up somewhere along the way. I just don't know where or when or why, but that's why the why is like, well, why is this showing up? And then I try to kind of analyze it, kind of meditate on it. Gives me a way to set my intention for the day. And sometimes I might share that with other people if I find it a profound insight in some way or another.
I'm going to draw a connection that might not be there or not, but I'm reaching for it. And I know and trust that you'll say, Dave, there's no connection there. But I talk a lot about the power of storytelling in prevention, treatment, and recovery, both for the listeners, but then also for the actual storyteller themselves. But songs, they have the story element. They have the story factor too. So wouldn't that be sort of one and the same?
I think so. I've heard people talk about that songwriting really is a gift, because I've seen interviews with artists or authors that have written books, and they're like, they can tell a story in 3.5, 4 minutes that takes me a chapter or two to tell, but they can synthesize it down in a way. And that's the part like that led up to anything really being, like understanding how music impacts me emotionally as an adolescent, because my parents played music when I was growing up, but the songs that stick with me to this day are the ones that tell a very vivid story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of a storyteller of sorts myself, but I like a song that tells a really powerful story. So as an example, the first song that I really can remember, I wanted that song so bad. And it's a singer named Jim Croce, and the song is Bad, Bad Leroy Brown. And I was a 9-year-old boy, and I mean, Bad, Bad Leroy Brown was the baddest man in the whole damn town, badder than old King Kong and meaner than a junkyard dog. And to a 9-year-old boy, it's like, I want to be, like, to me, it was like he's respected and, he's a tough guy and, kind of things that as a 9-year-old boy, you're playing G.I. Joe and playing army with your buddies, you're kind of wanting to be that. masculine kind of identity. And that was what Bad Bad Leroy Brown was. But it's a very vivid story song. And a lot of Jim's work is story songs. And so I've always sought those out. I like all kinds of music. I don't pick a genre, but the ones that seem to rise to the top are the ones that tell me a story about something that I don't understand. And as I'm explaining this, I watched a documentary about a group, and they had on there as a guest, he was a professor of music of some sort from a university. And he said, I had a student that did a master's thesis on this particular subject, and he spent all semester long or all year long, however long that takes, and wrote this thesis. And he said, this singer captured the same essence in 3.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that's the power of a song. And if you can deliver that and people can really kind of onboard that, it can be powerful in a lot of ways, or it can be, like I said, it can be harmful in ways. So it just depends on the listener and how you perceive it, how you receive it, and how you may or may not act on it.
Mm. I want to ask about a powerful song that, if I remember correctly, is part of your journey as to where you are today. So if I throw out the Beatles song "Help," where does that take you to in your life?
Well, that's the turning point. I've actually written a short story for a friend of ours that's doing a mm-hmm. collection of legacy stories. And I kind of tell the story through two things. The song that was kind of the gateway into substance misuse. And then it was the song by the Beatles, "Help," that was kind of the bookend to it. And it was the one that really kind of illustrated to me that songs spoke to people in very unique ways. And it was a Catholic priest that was talking about the fact that the lyrics of a popular song could be the catalyst to get someone's attention about their addiction. And I remember thinking in that moment, wow, I wonder if that would happen for me. Now, when I look back, the surprise is it was happening to me, right? But that's the desperation of that point when you're asking for help in recovery. And the Beatles song "Help" was the song he illustrated. And if you look at those lyrics, makes perfect sense. When I was much younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help. Well, here I am in an institution asking for help and realizing that someone has captured that essence of what I'm going through and put it in a song. And it kind of planted that seed, like, well, what other songs are in my life that might be signposts and those kinds of things. And I was a huge consumer, still am, but I had more time on my hands when I was younger. I was a huge consumer of music, and I worked in television at the time, and the general manager's assistant just one day casually said to me, "Steve, how long's it been since you listened to any music?" And I said, "It's kind of a strange question." And she said, "Your personality is different when you don't listen to music for a period of time." Oh. And that's another point in my life when I was like, what is this all about? And I started at that point, not just listening to like a popular song that I liked. I started like listening to entire albums, like what's being portrayed here. And I read an article and the author had said that if you really want to understand the author that writes popular novels or something like that, read everything that they've ever written and you'll have some understanding of who they are as a person. And so I started that through the lens of music and started thinking about some of the artists that I was enamored with and started listening to their entire albums and their entire catalogs just to kind of seek out like, what has been the path for this person? And lo and behold, after doing that for years on end, it found its way into the prevention work. To me, it's really about following the muse, if you will, or following your own life's path. And in prevention, that's kind of where I started in prevention. If you stick around here and you find some attraction to it, I think you have to put yourself into the work at some point. It has to start becoming a reflection of who you are. You have to be vulnerable enough to really say, this is kind of who I am. And this thing that I do kind of all merged together, because for me, prevention and my recovery, but prevention is really about people. Somebody I know says prevention is better together, and together we are stronger. And that says everything about prevention, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can't go in and change a community's rate of underage alcohol consumption just by telling the chief of police or having an article in the newspaper. You have to get people together in a concerted effort to make a difference. And that's why I do the work that I do. And that's why I'm passionate about bringing the music into it, because I think we all, whether we're as active in their consumption of music as I am, I think we all have been touched by music or love music in some form or fashion. And if I can just help people to see that maybe those songs are speaking to them about something, then that's kind of how it's played out in my life. I say that I practice a two-way communication with music. I listen to the song and then I ask the song, what is it that you want me to hear from this? And then I try to write about it.
Mm-hmm. So I know we could talk for hours, but we got a conference to get back to. So I want to just throw one more thing your way before we wrap up this chat as a to be continued. But I'm curious, what's final takeaway? If you're going to leave with one thing, what's it going to be? Or call to action for our listeners from around the globe?
Well, I love the call to action, and it is, think about that song. What is that song that stops you in your tracks and takes you to that moment? And why is it so unbelievably powerful in your life? And like I've already said, think about what it might be saying to you, because it's unique. I heard Dave Grohl, he's the lead singer for the band Foo Fighters, and others might know him as the drummer from Nirvana. But he said, the amazing thing is he said, I can stand on stage and I know that I am singing this song to 80,000 people. But the beauty of music is 80,000 people are singing back their own interpretation of that song. To me, that really personalizes all of this, in that I think music is a very powerful presence in our lives, and it must serve some greater purpose, because a question I'll often ask is, music doesn't have to exist, but it does. Think for a moment that music no longer is a part of your life. And I've never met anybody say, well, I won't miss it. Most people are like, wow, that means there's no soundtrack at the movie. The commercials are just talking heads. You don't even know that birds chirp because that's music. If all of that was gone from our lives, what a different world it would be. So I turn it around and say, this must mean that there's something here. And I would always challenge people just to ask themselves, what is the value that music plays?
And with that, listeners, do some thinking, do some listening, and have a conversation with some songs. Steve, thanks for taking time to chat. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Dave. Always glad to be here.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. And together we are stronger.